Who is this that even wind and sea obey? Isn't that the question we kind of wrestle with our whole lives? The one who gave us life, the one who redeemed us, the one who promises we'll live after death. Who is this one? It's what all Christians try to grapple with, understand, and come to an awareness of. And so the gospel posing this question is such an important one. But at first, we might get the wrong answer. We have to look very carefully, closely at the scene of this gospel. Who is this that even wind and sea obey him? Now, at first, with that scene with the Lord in the boat, the waves crashing, the wind violent, the frightened disciples huddling together. And when the Lord speaks the word, the wind ceases and the sea becomes calm. We might assume, at first glance, that the message is simply all we need to do in our lives is to call out to God. And in that moment, the storms of our lives will vanish. All the turmoil cease. We will not any longer have to fight against whatever it is that rages around us or within us. Now, if that is true, if that's the Christianity Jesus says, just call my name and you'll never have another problem, I almost want to raise my hand with yours and say, sign me up, Jesus, I want that one. It's an easy life, isn't it? But it's a life without the cross. It's not a life of discipleship. So there's something more in this story. Look again at the events that are happening. Look at the disciples. They do not escape the storm. We forget that they're in the boat and they are in the midst of the fury of wind and wave, so much so that it says the boat is nearly going to capsize or be filled with water and sink. They are seasoned fishermen. They have faced many storms on the same lake. They are terrified. It was a storm unlike others. It was an experience that they had not had, and it shook them to their very core, for they are frightened. They do not escape the storm. That's an important lesson. Then neither will we. The lesson here is not that you and I, or the lesson that anyone who believes their lives will be like, a Mediterranean cruise. Not at all. He is saying you will face turmoil. You will face difficulty. Some of you will be confronted with opposition. But he is saying, although you will face them, look at what happened to the disciples. They were not overcome, not overwhelmed. They were not swamped. They did not perish. Although they experienced the full effect of that storm, they were not in any way losing their lives because of it, nor scattered in the midst of it. The Lord was right there in the storm, in the boat, experiencing the same thing. The Lord does not abandon them or leave them to their own devices. He is reminding us that the storms may seem stronger than you. They may seem to come near to overpowering you. Know that even in the midst of those storms, I am with you. You are not alone to have to battle against it. And that perhaps is one of our greatest fears, as it must have been for the disciples. They could not control this. They could not see a way in which they would survive it. And the Lord is saying, your will and your power is too weak. Mine is not. Who is this that even wind and sea obey him? He is the one that will be with us in our storms. He is the one who will strengthen us and not leave us alone. That's the message of this. Who is this? That's the Lord, the one with us in the boat, the one helping us confront the storms and turmoil, the one who will not allow us to be overcome. But there is still more, it seems. For earlier in that same passage, the disciples confront something else. They are there, and with that powerful storm, begin to feel their own powerlessness. They begin to understand they are not strong enough. We cannot possibly battle this. Probably trying everything they knew from their experience of being on water and being fishermen to navigate through this storm. They were losing their headway. They were losing their confidence. So they change their question and say instead, "Don't you care?" Don't you care, Lord? Almost the words you and I have said before. We say that same thing whenever I feel that whatever I confront is beyond my strength, beyond my ability. Don't you care, Lord, what's going on within me? And even though some of us face difficulty and trial, even though we confront challenges, and even though we endure many problems, we're not always overcome, but sometimes we are. Lord, don't you care that I'm struggling here? I'm trying to figure this out. Don't you care? In my good days, I could look at the disciples and myself and say, of course God cares. This is the same one who healed the paralytic, who gave sight to the blind, who fed multitudes on a hillside. This is one who showed great compassion. How could they ask, don't you care? But when you and I deal with storms in our lives, we ask the same question. And the storms outside of us are one thing, and they are hard enough, for they come with the experience of life. But what about the storms within us? They kind of well up within inside of us. Those are the storms of fear, of doubt, the storms of depression and discouragement, the storms that would seem to almost want to sink us, pull us down from a place that no one can reach us. Those storms also are the ones the Lord can still. For that's when he says, be still, be quiet, to that raging questions, that doubt, that lack of confidence, that wondering if God ever cared for us, that sense that now we're alone and abandoned. Be still, be quiet. That's not the voice of God. And those storms are like the summer storms on our own lake. They come up out of nowhere, it seems. They can happen when illness strikes me, or maybe someone I love very much. They can happen when I have to change my situation, the transitions in my life. I have to change careers or jobs. I have to move from one place to another. I have to adjust to a whole new lifestyle. Or maybe it is sometimes when I now must live alone, when I had not planned on that. And that's just the situation I'm in now. Those storms, that's when the Lord says, be still, be quiet. For they are fearful. They rob me of my peace. They make me re-understand, redefine who I am. The Lord would call me to say, be still, be quiet. I can calm those storms as surely as I quieted the wind and the sea. Who is this that even wind and sea obey him? You and I know the answers to that, for the gospel has told us. He is the God who will not allow us to escape the storm, but will be with us in the midst of them, will help us endure them, and not allow them to overcome us. He is the God who is never abandoning us, but guiding us through those stormy times. He is the Lord that can quiet and still the inner storms that sometimes rage and tear us apart. He is the God who reminds us, I am always there. Never doubt if I care for you or I am with you. So this week, when the storms around you may rage or the storms within you suddenly give you doubt, just remember the gospel, and you'll know the answer of who is near. Who is this that even wind and sea obey him? And you and I know it is the Lord.